Buddy, I am going to be going live in a moment with a very dear client and colleague of mine, and her name is Valerie Stanton. And I'm in right. She's going to share a little bit about what it's been like to be in my program Radiance over the last um, couple months. So there she is. She's just joined. Hi, Valerie.
Hey, okay, we did it.
Complementary colors. I love it, like the purple and the teal together.
Thank you. Every
Yeah, awesome. Well, I'm so glad to have you go live with me today and agree to a little interview to share about like what's been changing and shifting for you in your body since starting the program. Would you maybe introduce yourself to anybody who's watching who, doesn't really know who you are yet?
Sure, I would be happy to. Thanks, Amy. I'm Valerie Stanton. I'm an intuitive healer, an energy worker, and I'm a gentle yoga teacher as well. And I am in month 3 of Amy's Radiance program for heart-led leaders. And I have been, I'm excited to talk about it more because I've been really loving it.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah. Can you tell everybody a little bit about why you decided to join? Like what inspired you?
Yes. I've been feeling called to it for a while, and I was really feeling like I needed a different kind of like pathway back home to myself, and into my body. And I was just noticing how avoidant that I was being of my own body and of being with myself, being like with my body. And that was really connected to some specific pain that I was having and some fears around what that pain could lead to, just throwing my back out. And it had led to a lot of really stuck energy in my life, because when I would exercise, my back could go out. So that was like the main reason that I was really drawn to it. And I loved that it was 6 months, and I could tell that just from knowing you that it was going to be held really impeccably.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. I know what you mean. We're feeling that pain and discomfort, especially on a regular basis, we start to have this like schism in our ability to like trust our body, right? To trust your body to move and to exercise and to do the things that you want to do when you're actively receiving pain signals that are preventing you from doing things in your life, or you do something that's supposed to be helpful, like exercise, and then you can't move for 3 days.
Yeah,
That's scary.
like debilitating. Oh, sorry. I think I lost your audio for a
Oh,
second.
I just was saying that's scary. That's like it's a thing that's happening. We don't trust our bodies, and therefore we kind of like lose a bit of trust in ourselves and confidence in ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And when that started happening, after I don't remember how old my kiddo was. I think he was 2.5 or something, but I hadn't had any issues with that before. But there actually had been certain yoga poses that I'd been like, ooh, this really aggravates some certain parts of my body. And I had known to just like stay away from those kind of. But then it was so interesting how once my kiddo was like around like 2, I would say, then that's kind of when that pattern started happening of like, you know, becoming more active in a certain way, and then my back would go out, and then it was like this compounded fear that just would build on top, where it's like I didn't see it coming, and it was like doing something that used to really work for me, and used to like help. And so when that happens, when you're like, whoa, like wait a second, there is totally, I think schism is a great word, just a split that happened for me.
Yeah, yeah, and I was so excited to work with you because you are really, you are really body aware. Like even though you had this period where you felt like you were disconnected, where you weren't wanting to be with yourself, like you have a long history of being attentive to your body in a really special way, I would say. And so that's just to say, like, even if you're a healer, if you're someone who is a yoga teacher, right? There are periods of time that things change in our bodies, and sometimes that's the time that we need to gather new tools and new
Yeah.
things to add to like our knowledge base. And in many ways, you know, this kind of experience where you're having pain and the things that we're working aren't helping, it's an opportunity for growth. I mean, I went through that. I was a yoga teacher who was in a lot of pain, and my
Yeah.
yoga seemed to be addressing it. And so that's how I ended up becoming a somatic educator, was that I found a new tool that I now blend my yoga, and you've gotten to experience that too. So before we get into that, maybe you can tell everybody about, you know, month one of the program is all about Hana somatics and releasing the tension in your body, and you've definitely done quite a lot of the releasing, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right? Yeah, and maybe you can say a little bit about that. How's that been to release the stuff that you were holding?
Yeah. Um, it's felt so good, and it's also really interesting because it's like it feels so normalized in my body now too, which is the kind of the cool thing about how it builds. So now I'm like, I almost need to like remind myself, like, oh yeah, like remember when you started in month one, how you were like scared to do these little like back arches because you were felt like maybe your back would go out, you know, like these different things that kind of hang on. So like month one was just I before I signed up for it, I really did not know, Amy, like how I feel like you like bring in support from like every angle for that first month. And I was like, whoa, like, okay, like, and having the one-on-ones with you and then having the group meeting, having like all of these tools. I mean, it was really helpful because it kind of felt like this little incubator, like, and it was kind of really what I needed to have that level of support, to help me understand right away that my body could make the shifts. Because I think it's challenging to stay with something if you don't really know if it's going to work for you, right? And so having all of that support really helped me to not have any fear anymore, like in my back area. And that's really big for me because that was keeping me from doing a lot of different things. So I don't have the back pain anymore that makes me afraid of my back going out, which is huge. And I've just noticed a lot of opening up in my body. And I do need to sit a lot for the work that I'm doing. My body is still like, I'm able to do that without kind of like everything going to whatever,
Yeah.
falling apart. So that was amazing. And then do you want me to talk about month two as well?
Yeah. Well, I also want to say something about what you just said, which is the forgetting, how
Yeah.
quickly we can forget how much discomfort we were in, because to be relaxed and free in your body is actually not this like ecstatic, explosive
Right.
burst of chemicals experience.
Yeah.
It's subtle, it's enjoyable, it's like actually really precious to be able to just bend over and move around and garden and go on a hike and walk around and not have pain in the way. But it's not this like boom, like cataclysmic, like orgasm experience, right? So that it's so subtle and it blends into our everyday experience, we forget how uncomfortable we were.
Yeah.
We forget how tense we were, you know?
Yeah.
And Thomas Hanna, the guy who, you know, created or discovered this modality, this way of moving, right? He used to say, someone will come to you and they will be in so much pain. They will say, I am in so much pain. I've been in so much pain for such a long time. I will pay you anything to get me out of this
Yeah.
pain. And he said, okay, you better take the payment up front because they're going to forget. They're going to forget how much pain they were in. And they're going to be like, what? I was in pain? What?
So,
I owe you $10 million? What?
yes. Okay, so he recognized that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Right.
Because this is where you're returning to, is a naturalness in your body.
Yeah.
It's a natural way of moving and being in your body. It's not something new in the sense that, you know, it's how you were made to move,
Right.
right? It was just there were contractions that were in the way of that. And you
Yeah.
removed those contractions. And so now there's this normalness, this naturalness that you get to experience.
Totally. Yes. And I remember when you mentioned gardening, I was like, I remember that being one of my big wins early on when I was like in the garden. I'd be like in the garden like hours every day, like weeding, and I was getting so much enjoyment from it. And I was like, I was in a position that would have been really scary, like that hunched over, you know, position that would have been really scary for me to do, prior to doing that. And that's when I really knew, like, okay, things are really shifting, which was, yeah, exciting.
Yeah. Well, go ahead and tell people about month 2, because I know that you were really excited about the food aspect of this program as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. So month 2 with the food piece, for me, it really felt like an invitation, kind of like a homecoming almost, because again, like a lot of the food stuff was things that I've already felt really resonant with. And I felt like it was important for me to bring that piece back in, because that's not, not most of the people around us aren't eating like that, I guess I would say. And really simplifying things. And it's like, to me, eating, mostly like delicious plant-based food, in a prepared kind of in a simple way, is what my body really wants. And so it's like all of these things are like kind of luxurious in a really simple way. It's like, how, I mean, even with yoga, with any practice, how like when we return to the basics, like we're sitting and breathing, we're like focusing on the most simple basic things, but like somehow that brings this like sense of luxury to my body, because it can be so present with it. And so that's what like month 2 is really like for me, is just kind of returning to that permission, to have that relationship with my body. And I mean, I like the way that you present it, because it's just, yeah, I mean, it's just like everything. It's just not a linear journey. Like we are going to dip in and out. So it's just nice to have all of the resources that you provided to kind of come back to it. For a second, but I definitely have noticed how, we've talked about this, but how much the food pieces are linked to the rest of your body, to bloating and digestion and, and inflammation, and all of these things are so interlinked. And so, because like my wellness journey really began a long time ago with my digestive stuff that I was working on. Like that's something that's always been in my awareness. And I kind of felt like, again, this was something I needed to kind of come home back to myself. And I needed another way to do it, a really gentle way of being able to bring awareness into my body with it. So I have been using the somatic tools, kind of like you have mentioned, when I'm starting to be like, oh no, I ate this food and my body didn't like it and it's freaking out. And it can kind of be calming. And that's really nice.
Right. Well, and the thing is too, is that you're increasing your body awareness so much through your somatic movement practice. And when you're more aware of how your body feels, you start wanting it to feel good.
Yeah.
You just naturally, you're like, oh, well, if I'm going to be paying attention to what's going on in there, I would like it to be like a comfortable experience. I would like it to be pleasant, kind of this desire for ourselves to thrive, right? Starts to come to the forefront just when you become more aware of yourself. It can be really uncomfortable to become more aware of your body and not make any kind of change in how you're operating. Although, in my experience, there's not a whole lot of my clients that do this work with me and don't all automatically start making changes and things, things that feel more resonant to them because of that body awareness, right? But I can totally understand, certain folks that have maybe just done 1 or 2 sessions with me and they start really feeling into their body and they're like, oh, whoa, that's unpleasant.
Right.
That's uncomfortable. That doesn't feel good. That is like a mirror to me of what has not really been serving me, whether it's in my food behaviors, whether it's in my relationships, whatever it is, so it's always such a courageous thing to develop that body intelligence, because it's not easy, especially if you have had a habit for whatever reason of dissociating, tapping out, ignoring, right? Which is related to eating things that don't really serve you, really, I think.
Absolutely. It's like shooing yourself away. Like if you want to make sure you're not going to be present with yourself, do something that's really uncomfortable to be present with, and you will probably continue to avoid the conversation, and it's like the somatic tools, I feel like, can help to reopen that conversation. And I think I had mentioned this to you, but I feel like, that avoidance that I was feeling, or I don't know what I would call it, dissociation or whatever, like in some ways I can see the intelligence in it, because when I felt like I had exhausted the tools that I had and they hadn't been helping me in the way that I needed to bring me back into my body, I needed something different. And I didn't really want to just sit there and be present and super miserable for all of the things that weren't feeling good. And so I understand like the body is, or the compulsion, you know, to kind of avoid or escape. But I also knew that was not me living my fullest life by any means.
Yeah, yeah. You know, and you're right. That is like, it's totally okay. And it's part of our body's intelligence when things are painful or uncomfortable to distract ourselves for a while. That's actually necessary sometimes in order to downregulate, in order to, you know, keep going, you know, when doing the things that we have to do in life.
Yeah.
It's actually, you're spot on with that being part of our body's intelligence, but that's not where it ends, right? That's not like the conclusion. That's just one part of like a larger process, you know, and you really deciding to step into that and receive support. I mean, what's amazing to me is that I created this program from all of my own struggles and
Yeah.
and the struggles that I went through with my body for like a decade, you know, around food, around the way that my body looked and moved and how I felt about my body and the relationship with my body. And I've kind of distilled like, you know, this is the, if I had this program back in the day, like this would have helped me and accelerated my ability to be with my body and go through this process, you know, and actually develop a daily somatic movement practice. Because, you know, I was even in the somatic educator training and I didn't have a daily practice
Right.
because I didn't really like laying down and feeling to my body when I was by myself. I was fine to do it if you were guiding me through it,
Right.
if you were there with me, you know, but on my own, it was hard to lay down for 15 minutes, you know, and go through a whole sequence by myself.
Yeah.
So I totally get that because it took me a really long time to come out of my pain,
Yeah.
even though I had all these really great tools, because I didn't have the level of support that I needed.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's really what this program is ultimately about, is about giving you the support and the tools simultaneously so that you can make a really big shift that has been possibly, your body's been asking you for this for some time. And it's been hard to just do it alone. Even if you have the wisdom, even if you have some really great tools, there might be like some missing pieces and you might not have that like group support from someone who has like been where you are. Right.
100%. I mean, yeah. And I feel like that, yeah, just like normalizing that resistance that people might feel in the beginning, and just, it's, yeah, like you've experienced it, I experienced it. Like it is a really, I think it's a really normal thing, especially when, you know, when you've had some fear built up around being in your body too. It can just, even as you're shifting your lived experience, it's still kind of scary in some ways, you know, to like repattern, and almost to, you know, something that I find too is like sometimes it's challenging to like let things be good when we're used to them not being good.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
that change. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like, you know, when you release the tense muscles in your body and there's that moment of like, wait, this is new. This is
Yeah.
different. I'm relaxed. I'm calm. I'm not used to that.
Yeah.
There, you know, maybe I thought I was relaxed or I thought I was calm, but now there's this new level of relaxed and calm
Yeah.
that I'm experiencing, and there's a little bit of disorientation.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you experience this. You might feel like even within a few hours or the next day, you can feel your body retightening, like going back into that pattern because it's familiar.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's this process of gently unwinding and gently reminding your body that it can continue to let go, that it doesn't have to hold on so tightly, you know, literally in its musculature.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, this work just keeps going deeper and deeper. And then you're like, whoa, it's like different. It kind of is like moving through different dimensions, like in your own body, which is really cool. And that's another thing I really like about it. And I don't know that everybody experiences it in this way, but for me, it's like very, like, you know, lightly psychedelic, but like in a very friendly way.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's elements to it. I mean, we're
Yeah.
working with the nervous system. We're working with,
Right.
you know, the contractions that have been accumulating in your body your whole life. And who knows, maybe from other lifetimes or other dimensional realities, we could get real jiggy with it. You know, the just you know the metaverse and the different ways that like our physical bodies are part of, you know, this larger system, this larger piece,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, with all of the work that I do energetically, like an ancestral things, all of that is held in the body. So it's like you can start to feel those things unwinding. And I mean, you can tell from watching this, anybody could tell I'm a very verbal person. And then it's so interesting because whenever I do these practices and you're like, ask me for feedback, and I'm always like, like it brings me into this space that's like beyond words, which does not really happen to me almost in any other occasion. So that's kind of special for me too, to be so in it. Then I'm actually not always verbalizing what's going on. It's kind of magical for me, honestly.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's great because there's certainly benefit to naming things, to identifying, to, you know, giving things words. And
Yeah.
there's also something special about just experiencing and being. And sometimes when we're so quick to have like an explanation or a justification or something, we miss out on the full being with that sensation,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Especially when it's new, sometimes I'll be like, I don't really know how to describe this sensation. It's just like there's a new vocabulary needs to be invented for it.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, then month 3, we're in it right now, and we've been looking at the neurophysiology of movement, which I know some of it you probably, you know, learned in your yoga training, but we're like kind of adding a more experiential like thing to it where you're getting to like understand these mechanisms, these nervous system mechanisms as like part of your everyday experience, like a little bit more.
Yeah.
And then we've been doing some somatic yoga. Would you say something about how that's been for you as a gentle yoga teacher to try out this other way?
Yeah, it's been really fun. I've really, really enjoyed it. I was definitely looking forward to this month, and it hasn't disappointed. Yeah, it's just like it's just like a new way of sort of wiring your brain and body to be with yourself. And so yeah, I already am, like you were saying, like really tend towards gentle and slow because I always want to invite people into their own experience more than like, okay, move yourself into this shape. Like I know that doesn't is not something I have ever been interested in doing. And I had a really great yoga teacher training for that really encouraged that. But yeah, I feel like this takes it to kind of like the next level, and I've been having fun just kind of playing around with that and seeing how it feels because like we were saying, yeah, like my practice, I thought like my practice was really slow, and then I was like, whoa. Like it's almost like, I don't know, it reminds me of like this part in like the Matrix, you know, where it's like time slowing down because you're like, oh, you can really, you know, there's like, yeah, more pauses and more checking in with the body. And it's a really supportive practice for just a really deep level of intimacy with the body. And I can't imagine anybody being in a somatic yoga class like I've experienced in yours and like having there almost be like any amount of like comparing yourself to somebody else. There's like no room to be like, am I doing this the way that, you know, Charlie's doing it or whatever? Like there's just it's so not about that, which I really love a lot.
Yeah, it's very internal. In fact, you know, I've been doing these somatic yoga day retreats where I have like 8 people in the room with me, you know, which is different than a Zoom room. So it's because I
Yeah.
can see them a little more. And almost everybody keeps their eyes closed the entire time, which is amazing. You know, I'm telling them and I'm describing the yoga pose that they're going to do. They're visualizing it in their mind to the best of their ability. And then they're going about it to the best of their ability,
Yeah.
and nobody needs to look around. There's no picture that they need to compare themselves to of what this pose looks like. They just get to, you know, figure out how to, you know, create what they envisioned in their mind. So it's
Yeah.
like truly this like personal physical manifestation that's individual to them. And I'll see people do stuff that's like a little different than what I said, and I'm just like, that's what their body wanted to do.
Yeah.
That's what their consciousness like figured out, you know, and they're not hurting themselves. They're not, you know, they're taking care of themselves. Like I can tell that because that's what happens when you have done, you know, we do the somatic movement and then we do the yoga. You've
Yeah.
already tapped into how your body feels. and you're moment to moment paying attention to that. And that alone is going to decrease the risk for injury, right? That's, way decrease the risk for injury versus, the yoga class is moving at a pace and I'm looking around to see what's next. And we're going to this next thing and this next thing. And, there's a little bit of anxiety. I feel that in like a flow yoga. I enjoy it. I have a
Yeah.
good time, but there have definitely been times when I've overdone it and I've walked away from the class really tight in a certain area of my body or my neck or something for a few days because I wasn't really being that attentive like the whole time. And I wasn't really given the space to be attentive. Even if the teacher, between downward dogs is like, listen to your body. They're like, which bless them. Yes, that's a good thing to say. But it's also like, are you giving me space to do that?
Totally.
Like maybe not.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that was how I learned. When I first learned yoga a really long time ago, that's how I learned, was going to drop in vinyasa classes without any prior experience. And it's a lot. I mean, and you can start to develop certain patterns, and it also makes sense, like if you don't have that internal awareness and I remember like they would just be saying these cues and I'd be like, how am I supposed to translate that into meaning something? So like, of course I was just looking at my neighbor to gather how to do it.
Right.
And it starts to you just start to get into that pattern then of like, oh, okay, how the other person's doing it is like the right way, instead of coming into your own experience, for sure.
Well, and you have no idea what they're experiencing. We talk about that in the, the month 3 of the somatic yoga. You can see a yoga pose, you can see a person doing something. You have no idea what their somatic experience is, where they're feeling the pose in their body, what their body history is, what their mental or emotional state is. All you're seeing is what you're seeing from the outside, and then you're putting your own projections or imaginings, usually like in comparison to yourself in some way, right? So it's not a very effective model of learning, in my opinion, now that I have another way in terms of being able to figure out, for example, it took me a really long time to figure out how to do a chaturanga because I was just hearing that and watching people do it, like you said, and I'm just like, okay, what am I doing? And and there were times I was definitely using my body and the muscles in my body in like a uncontrolled way, and it really helped when I finally had some teachers who, slowed everything down, like super slow, so that I could pay attention, that showed me how to modify to do, part of the chaturanga so I could get, the muscles that I needed to use to engage. Think about it. Sometimes yoga studios have that. They have yoga workshops about handstands or headstands or whatever, and they slow everything down because that's how we learn effectively. We don't learn effectively through monkey see, monkey do. We learn effectively through slowing down and sensing into our own experience while we're doing something.
Yeah, exactly. Takes it from cookie cutter into like your personal embodied experience, because I think you could be doing yoga but actually really practicing a pretty high level of dissociation or leaving your body in order to just get into a pose, and you might feel congratulatory because you're like, oh, I can get into that pose, but it doesn't really mean you're having that experience that's supportive of your body.
Oh yeah, that was definitely me for a spell. I would do a lot of really extreme back bending and stuff, and I would do it really repetitively because, each time you would get deeper. And then I ended up actually learning why it is that you get deeper each time. It's not that you're necessarily becoming more flexible. It's that you are learning to override the pain sensations, and your body's getting flooded with feel-good chemicals from all of the stretching and the strain on your system, that you just basically have a higher tolerance for discomfort. And that's part of why you're getting deeper and deeper.
Yeah.
And then when I learned that, I was like, I felt really bad for like a while. Like I've had to come through a lot of like self-shame that I had when I realized like, oh, wow, I've been doing this to myself. Like I've been creating this pain in my body through the things that I've been doing that I thought were positive, that I thought were helpful. But then my body's telling me like, oh, this is painful. This is not really working, So it's always so exciting to me when I'm working with yoga teachers who, are already curious about a somatic way, who maybe are already resonating like you with, a gentle approach, with a slow approach, because this, just like you said, it's going to take it to another level, because you're coming into this also with the new somatic awareness in your body. You're coming into this like yoga practice with that, experience.
Yeah, 100%. It really resonates with me. And because when I was learning how to teach yoga, I mean, and I've shared this with you, but I was sorry for their experience, but I was blessed to have teachers who shared about, that they were doing, daily, really intense like Ashtanga practices or whatever it may be, by the book, and that they ended up needing like some joint replacements, or that they had overridden their body signals so much. And so they were really supportive of modifications, and like teaching from the modification up, and really listening. And when I started noticing certain patterns in my own body, like I was like, man, this level of like this amount of forward folding, I was like, that was one of those things where I was like doing forward folds over and over and over. I was like, this does not feel good in my body. Like it would start to mess with my back. I was like, this is not that great for me. Or like forward bends. And so, but then I started thinking about that as a yoga teacher. I was like, but there's going to be those things for everybody, and they're all going to be individually. And how could I possibly know? Like I can know like, oh, I'm not going to do a bunch of those in a practice, but for somebody else, it'll be something different, So I really love that. So, yeah, individualized and able to, really have people regulate it themselves. So, yeah.
Yeah, beautifully said. Well, this has been such a wonderful chat. Thank you so much for, coming on and sharing with everybody. We're actually going to record a podcast episode together sometime, and we're going to talk more about your work. And I would love to hear about how, I know you have some projects and some cool stuff that you're working on. And so I would totally love for you to get to share more about that on the podcast, and also about, how it might be blending, or, how the somatic work is supporting you in those new things that you're onto.
Cool. Yeah, it'll be fun.
Very cool. Okay, well, for anybody who's just joining, this video will finish loading. You should go back and watch it. Valerie's amazing, and she's sharing about her experience in the 6-month Radiance somatic education program. And I think it was just a really lovely interview. For many people, will get something out of it, learn something more about themselves, about their relationship to their body. And thank you again, Valerie, for being with me today.
Thank you, Amy.
Yay. Okay, see you soon.
Bye.